Hi, I'm Daryl Brown, and welcome to Shades of Us, a show that explores multicultural identities and how they intersect. This month, we'd like to highlight some inspiring people we met this past season. They come from different backgrounds and give diverse perspectives on the things that shape us. We'll take a look back at these guests up next. In our Love and Relationships in the 21st Century episode, we took a look at one mixed Korean couple who, through their podcast, The Happy Project, explore the complexities of the subculture and the relationships within.
Hello, welcome to the Happy Project podcast.
Hi, my name is Cedric Stout.
I'm Becky White, and I started our YouTube channel, The Happy Project, or in Korean, 혼혈 이야기. When I tell people about The Happy Project, I just say we're experiencing and exploring the mixed Korean experience, both ethnically and culturally. What does that look like? What does that mean?
Today, my guest here is Cedric.
He was our first official interview in 2018.
A kid's 1-year birthday party, a Christmas party, and one interview later, this is how we met. I had just moved to Korea. We had mutual friends, and we went to their son's birthday party. And that's where we met. This girl comes trucking up to me with these cute pigtails, and then she approaches me and says, "You're half Korean, aren't you?" My mother is Korean and my dad is African American. My dad was in the Air Force. He was stationed in New Jersey, and my mom actually met my father in New Jersey. And so she had just immigrated.
My mother's Korean and my father's Caucasian American. I was born in the States, but a military family, so we moved all over the US. It absolutely was our multicultural background that brought us together. In Korea, because society is quite homogenous if you look at first glance. So somebody who looks physically different, you stand out. When it comes to a feeling of belonging as being mixed Korean, I didn't even realize I was missing that. And then when I went to Korea, I went with the intent of being with my people or being with people who look like me. And more than ever, I realized this is never gonna happen. And so it was quite many stages of feeling rejection, of feeling an outsider and all of that. And then kind of coming back full circle and feeling more confident in myself and who I am and where I look, regardless where I am. And then meeting fellow mixed Koreans, it just kind of gives you that extra something, like more extra confidence in who you are.
We automatically just connected with each other because we could relate on so many things. You know, those things that maybe so many people and your friends or people that don't look like you or have your experiences, like those things that they can't understand, Becky was able to understand for me.
What does it look like to be half Korean in Korea?
Surprisingly, some people responded or left comments or said things like, "No one has ever put this into words before, but that's exactly how I feel." And I think that's the thing that caught me first, was realizing maybe I have an ability to take these emotions and experiences and put it into words, because we all feel it, we know it, but how do you communicate it? And that's kind of where it began. And I distinctly remember sitting in the office in the dark by myself, and I thought of Happy Project, because I wanted a word that was friendly enough, embracing enough, not too closed off, because if you have explicitly half Korean, right, then what about the other side? What does that mean?
I'm half black, Becky is half white. And so understandably, especially here in the West, in America, there are big differences and nuances that come with that. I've had the experiences of going into a store and then having the person who owns the store just kind of keep a watch on me and slowly follow me. In Korea, there are many times where we would be out, maybe at a restaurant, or we would be on the subway train going to a particular location, and we would maybe get stares from people. But I would get a certain maybe amount of stares versus Becky, because Becky does look a little bit more like she can blend in versus me, I just sort of stick out. And so those are those little, I guess, microaggressions that we experience that over time it just kind of builds, and then we would talk about it. And luckily we're able to connect on that, and I'm able to maybe vent out or talk to her, and she, you know, we have our little therapy sessions.
It depends on how old people are and their perception of white Koreans versus black Koreans. And so you could feel it rather than it would be very explicit. In the US, I distinctly remember when I told somebody that I was coming back to the US and we were together, and he saw my picture and he said, "You know, people still look down on interracial couples in some places." And I was like, okay, Thanks, for the vote of confidence.
Today we thought we'd talk about the things to think about if you're thinking about getting into an interracial or international relationship, or if you're in one right now.
My advice to a young couple that is multicultural or mixed race would be to be open. And what I mean by that is to be open to your partner's perspective, how they're used to living, how they communicate, and just come into the middle and just meet in the middle.
There can be quite a traumatic history behind the first generation of mixed Koreans especially. And so I'm always really cautious when I ask people like, oh, so where are you from? How did your parents meet and all of this? And a lot of it is quite layered and complicated, but I think it's really valuable to point out also these beautiful love stories and relationships that many people haven't heard about because of the dark history that can overshadow. So we really celebrate genuine love and relationships that have crossed borders of race and culture and country. That just comes with the territory when we're talking about On the Happy Project.
Many areas in the U.S. are becoming heavily affected by unpredictable weather patterns and environmental change. In our climate action episode, we met Elizabeth Jean-Pierre, an indigenous environmental and climate justice leader whose organization works to help communities impacted by climate change.
I feel like I am literally putting myself on the line to make sure that 7 generations yet unborn has a place where they can live, where they could thrive, where they could have the kind of lives that they deserve. My name is Elizabeth Jean-Pierre. I'm the executive director of UpRose, and UpRose works at the intersection of racial justice and climate change. We are an intergenerational organization that is women-led. It is an organization that is led by the front line, by people of color, the ones most likely to be impacted by climate change. I think that people of African and indigenous ancestry have always been matriarchal, have always taken care of the mother, of Mother Earth. We've always lived within our carbon footprint. We haven't been the ones that have been contributing to massive levels of carbon and co-pollutants in our communities. And so I think that we need to reclaim our land, take our land back. Environmental justice is our response to fight the siting of environmental burdens in communities of color and Black and brown communities. Anything like power plants, waste transfer stations, brownfields. Climate justice is a little different. Climate justice is sort of birthed by the environmental justice movement. And it's the fact that recurrent extreme weather events are going to exacerbate all of the problems that exist in our community. Climate justice is sort of the frontline response. And when we say frontline, we're talking about Black and indigenous people who have had to deal with the legacy of extraction, colonialism, and enslavement. And climate change is the result of that. So UpRose was founded in 1966. It's the oldest Latino community-based organization in Brooklyn. And it was founded to address the social service needs of the emerging Puerto Rican community that was moving up from Red Hook. I became the executive director in 1996. I came into this work literally because people in the community, they were concerned about a lot of the health disparities that are connected to the environmental conditions that exist in this community and conditions that I live with, that my family lives with because I was born and raised in an environmental justice community. And so I didn't come to this work with wanting to be an environmentalist or even thinking about that. I'm a civil rights lawyer in training. I was fighting against extreme policing, but I think that it's our responsibility to use our education and our resources to advance community priorities. And so early on in my first year, I'm sort of thinking, how can we complement the work that is taking place in Sunset Park? And how can we evolve in an organization that we have a culture of practice that honors our ancestors, but also provides the community with the support that they need so that we can transform the landscape. My family's been in Sunset Park since 1980, and we live here. It is a very mixed community, and I think that's what makes it really cool. What we have is a community of over 130,000 people who are predominantly indigenous. I would say indigenous from, Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico, Caribbean, from Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, a lot of Asians, mostly Fujin. Because our campaigns come from the community, we literally feel like we staff the community. We didn't say to the community, we're gonna do this. We were asked, can you help us with this? And then here, what we do is we do the research, we collect the data, we figure out what the land use plan is, and then we share that with the community. We've doubled the amount of open space, we've stopped the siting of power plants, we have pushed back against development that would have displaced our community, and we've done that successfully. In 2013, we all came together to build a thing called the B, Building Equity and Alignment for Impact. We knew that there was tension between the climate activists and those of us who are frontline leaders. In 2014, we become part of the leadership of the People's Climate March, where we decide we're going to hold the largest climate march in the history of the United States. 400,000 people show up for the march in New York City. And it's also the year that we found the Climate Justice Alliance. For years during the Civil Rights Movement and past that, decisions were made by grass-top organizations that decided in the Beltway, in DC, what was in the interests of communities like ours. We flipped that table, and we're saying that the national agenda, the national priorities have to be defined by what is happening on the ground. So UPROSE and about 89 other organizations and formations are part of the Climate Justice Alliance who have flipped the conversation and have created a national agenda that honors the local struggles and the local priorities. I am the co-chair of the Climate Justice Alliance, and it is a national organization of frontline leaders from Puerto Rico to Guam. We are working to operationalize a just transition. We are collectively working to move away from the extractive economy to a regenerative economy. And we're doing that because, the problems are different in different places. UPROSE is a member of the Climate Justice Alliance, and UPROSE is also a member of the New York City Environmental Justice Alliance and is a co-founder of New York Renews. New York Renews is responsible for creating the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. That is literally shifting power, where we're saying, you know what? You all don't get to helicopter in our communities and make decisions about us, without us. We will determine what's the legislation, what are the priorities, how are we going to invest in infrastructure, how are we going to make sure that industrial sectors are retrofitted and that they're greened up so that they are green manufacturing and not polluting and contaminating our spaces. So in the climate justice movement, we want to be able to build and do in a way that is meaningfully intergenerational. That's important because UPROSE became intergenerational my first year when young people came in with this attitude, like, what do you do here? And I was like, fill it up and we'll figure out what we do together. I started to train them on everything that I knew, and I trained them to organize, and they became the backbone of the organization. There's young people on our board, on my staff. They've been part of environmental justice organizations now for years, many, many years. They've grown up in the organizations, but it has shaped their career path, right? And some people talk about the pipeline of leadership, and we don't use the word pipeline here. We use vine. It's a vine of leadership. Some young people are creatives, and that's how they influence and shape how we think about climate justice. There isn't anything right now that young people are studying or that young people are doing, regardless of whether it's filmmaking or it's accounting, that isn't going to be shaped and impacted by climate change. So they have to all be involved at some level of figuring out how to integrate a climate lens to the work that they're doing, because no sector, no discipline is safe. Everything is going to be impacted by climate disruption. So getting them involved early on is important. It's necessary.
Dance has taken on many forms and styles through the years, highlighting tradition and identity. In our Cultural Shades of the Dance Diaspora episode, we met Christina Hedrick, a Greek dance instructor who uses this art form as a way to connect to her roots.
It feels to me, especially the older that I get, that it really comes from the soul. When you're doing it, it's hard to be doing anything but that. My name's Christina Hedrick, and I'm a Greek dance teacher, yoga and meditation teacher, and copywriter in New York City. I got into Greek dance the way a lot of Greek Americans do. So for context, I'm half Greek. born and raised in Virginia, and I grew up in a Greek church community in Virginia, Newport News, that had a really robust, big tradition of Greek dance. So I wanted to Greek dance from a very young age. It wasn't something I had to be convinced to do. I have loved it since I was teeny, tiny, and I got into it just that way through the church. We use the word the church, but really the churches function as these community centers in a lot of America. So I say Greek dancing at the church. There's really nothing to do with the church, but that was the community center next to the church where we did all of our Greek American activities, going to learn how to speak Greek, doing Greek school, Greek dance, all these things. We actually started competing as a group when I was little. So in the US, there's this huge culture of Greek folk dance competitions, which is as funny and interesting as it might sound. And so I actually grew up going with a church group. So when you compete, you don't compete as an individual, you compete as a group. So when we say Greek dancing, the country of Greece is a very modern idea. We're talking about people who lived in different regions that for most of history weren't even Greece. So someone from northern Greece would have never seen or had anything to do most likely with someone from the island of Crete. And their dancing is totally different. The instruments are different, the musicality, all of it's completely different. So at a competition, for example, say you're doing a set from Epirus, northern Greece. And you're not only gonna say we're doing from Epirus, you're gonna say which village or which area. You'll present research sort of backing up why you're doing, and then you'll be judged on, the styling, is it correct, the costumes, all of it. I really find Greek dance to be not only special, but also simply fun compared to other forms of dance, is that it's this real communal experience. And I could preface that by saying I did grow up also dancing ballet and doing more sort of formal Western forms of dance. And there could be a lot of emphasis on perfectionism there versus with Greek dance. Okay, if you're competing, there's still, things can get intense and there can be a lot of emphasis on perfectionism as well. But it's a shared experience. You're never really out there alone. You're holding hands with people, you're forced to look at each other. It's a nice balm for, I think, our hyper-individualistic modern times that are also very techy. I had been living in New York City for a while, and I was missing having a group like the one I grew up with. I was just doing the classes on my own whenever I had the bandwidth, and then people started coming to me both for privates, to get ready for weddings, or to get a little more stylistically in tune with something. I started doing those open level classes actually under the umbrella of Yamas, so that's kind of how I got my name out there as a teacher and just gave myself permission to start teaching. There's no accreditation program for Greek dance, right? You kind of just start doing it or think you know enough, but with Yamas, the reason I connected to health is, well, it's many-fold. Greek dance is a workout. I say this all the time. If you dance Cretan for a long time, you're going to sweat. One of the most special things about it is how it gives you this ethnographic history lesson of Hellenic people. You can learn a lot about the people. I mean, the costumes are just laden with meaning. Every single thing tells a story, has meaning. So it's very nuanced, and I get a little upset when people are like, teach me the Zorba movie dance, that's Greek dance, let's break plates. I'm like, I've never broken a plate in my life, to be completely honest with you, at least on purpose. If that brings you joy, great. But to me, that's not what I'm here to teach and share. And I think it really waters down this actually incredibly nuanced, beautiful, rich thing that tells the story of people in this land for thousands of years. There's a lot I could say that I've learned about myself through dance. I both know way more than I think I know, and I know nothing. And it's this wonderful paradox. I find a lot of times these things come out of me that I've learned over the years, because again, I've been doing this since I was 4, and I do a lot of independent research, and I have days where I'm like, wow, I really know so much about this, and I'm so excited to share it. The other side of it is that then I realize how little I know when I talk to experts, or you talk to someone who's written a thesis on one specific region. I'm deeply humbled constantly that I have so much more to learn, and I hope to be a lifelong student of this, because there's always more to learn.
We'll be back after this break. And finally, what does being a dad mean to modern men? In our fatherhood episode, we met Dirk Anschutz, a photographer whose father and son's portrait project explored his relationship with his absent father and his own struggles with being a dad.
As a photographer, you have a day pass into a world that you would normally not get into. My name is Dirk Anschutz. I'm a photographer and I'm working on a portrait series about fathers and sons. I'm born in Germany and I came to the US when I was 22 years old. I kind of stumbled into photography. I always liked it as a hobby when I was a teenager. In 2012, I became the father of a son, Raymond. I'm also the only child of a single mom, and I've never met my dad. And so, as I was dealing with becoming a father, there were definitely moments when I felt that I didn't have a male role model about raising the child. And I was interested in how other fathers were dealing with their kids, were dealing with their sons in particular. And so the project started out as a very personal thing, kind of taking pictures of friends that were also fathers of sons. But then it turned into, the more pictures I took, the more became a little bit bigger than that, because I also could see that in America there are so many different ways to grow up and so many different ways to be a father, that as the project got bigger and bigger, it almost became like a lens to look at America. America is a kind of a polarized country right now, and that also bleeds into how people raise their children. But on the other hand, there's also like a lot of stuff that's like really similar in how people raise their children, like the love for their family, the love for their children. The struggles that they have are actually very, very similar, no matter what your background is, no matter where you come from. Jason, as a firefighter, he's definitely into keeping things secure and protection and making sure things are safe. But he's also a surfer and he has a lot of self-confidence in his physical abilities. And, so he's fine on a skateboard with his son. And I love that because in fatherhood, everything is about balance. So this was also a picture that took a while to produce. I wanted to have a hunter and his son because, hunting is such a, throughout thousands and thousands of years, fathers taught their sons how to hunt. Finding an African American hunter was actually not that easy, but I finally succeeded. And so this is Jonathan and Ben. This is also an important picture to me. These are actually our neighbors, Mike and his son Elliot. It's not like an unusual or dramatic picture, or but this is for me emblematic how much fatherhood has changed, because when I was a kid, very few men would have changed the diaper on their kids, and even fewer would have allowed a photographer in the room when they did it. Paula transitioned to become a woman when she was 61. And when she was a man, she was a pastor at a big church in Long Island, quite traditional. And when she came out, she lost all her jobs. And she leads now a small congregation in Colorado. Her son Jonathan is also a pastor in Brooklyn. And he also wrote a book about his experience about his dad transitioning to womanhood, and spoiler alert, it was not easy. And I think it's amazing because Paula, she remained the dad. The dad is now a woman, so being a dad isn't necessarily a part of your masculinity. It covers something bigger than that. My son Ray, I love him very much, and I'm really happy. I was a reluctant father. I was reluctant to become a father. And, you know, I'm very happy with what I got. If I could have picked him out of a catalog, it wouldn't have been so much different. So he is a kid that if there's a choice between yes and no, he will usually go for yes. He is up for a lot of stuff. He's up for trying a lot of stuff. He likes doing things. He's very social. He loves being with people. He loves traveling. We go look at art together. He's awesome, and I love hanging out with him.
Thanks for joining us in this Best of Season 6 show. If you want to know more about the guests we featured, check out our Instagram page at Shades of Us TV and online at tv.cuny.edu. I'm Darryl Brown. See you next time on Shades of Us.